Hi everyone, welcome to day 3, releasing old stories. So hopefully you've listened to the introduction and you've done day 1 and day 2 where we talk about consistency and making that time to connect with yourself. So releasing those old stories. The idea is that when we're growing up, we are influenced by the conditioning of the family that we live with, their beliefs, their values, their ideas about life, the roles that we have, our position in the family, with the youngest child, oldest child, whether we have a father there or not, whether parents on a second marriage. So these are all ideas that and beliefs that eventually form patterns of interactions. And sometimes, especially years ago, I noticed when I originally was working as a therapist, we often go to therapy with these stories about our mom, our brothers, our sisters, our life, um, and what that life's consisted of, and the characters that are in that story. But there comes a time where you need to kind of honor that that's been your experiences and that's been your story. But it's about then, making new stories, putting a new chapter in the book of our life. So the card that we're going to relate this to today is the Death card. So the Death card is endings and also transformation. So, what this invites you to do today is think about the stories that you've been telling yourself and other people, what's contained in those stories, and then how to let go of that. So, the Death card signals endings that can also lead to new beginnings. It invites you to let go of old beliefs, patterns, or identities that no longer serve you. Transformations at hand. So, as we lean into one of the most powerful steps of empowerment is letting go. Sometimes we hold on to versions of ourselves or identities shaped by fear, failure, or pain because they're familiar. But today you're invited to release the old stories that have weighed you down, and stories like, I'm not good enough, I always fail, and this is who I am. You're not your past, you are the author of your new story. So imagine placing those heavy old stories on a boat, pushing it out to sea, and waving goodbye with gratitude for the lessons they brought. Now turn to the sunrise and notice that the new chapter is beginning. Now, I'll just share something with you how I had a bit of a struggle with this a few years ago, because some of the life experiences I've used as stories to teach about the different experiences I had, what I learned, the personal wisdom I gained, and anything that helped me move forward. And the one that I kind of really struggled with for a while was after my car accident. And I think because sometimes we can have something that has impacted us so much, especially if it creates PTSD, symptoms, or you're diagnosed with it, and you're having to focus so much on your healing that becomes the total focus of your life, then it takes a while to process through that. You can't just, somebody dies that's really important to you, or you've had a massive life change, health scare. It isn't something that you necessarily get up and just brush that off and move forward. And often we have to, but at a later date, um, the feelings surrounding that can come back. They can come back up. So after my car accident, I'd already been a therapist a long time and I knew the value of therapy. And I also knew the value of the different healing modalities that I deployed. Because sometimes I feel like you need a multi-pronged approach, just not one, not just talking to one person. Once a week, we require a range of approaches, and that's good at that time. So I did talk about it, but actually, if you're in the midst of sort of PTSD, because I used to have really horrible dreams, wake up like I was dying in the dreams, um, to the point that I'd even sort of wrote down all my wishes if anything happened to me. because I was just really scared of leaving the boys, with nothing and not giving them any direction as to where to find anything that, I work on or have access to, or anything that they might need to sort out. And it really felt quite real. I'm not normally that sort of person, but the dreams were quite frightening at times, and I had a lot of them in the early months. The other facet of this is you have to keep telling the story if you're trying to get support from work and go to occupational health to try and get to convince your managers that you need a lighter weight laptop, because the one that you're carrying that weighs like a kilo is really difficult to carry if you've got injuries, and that was what I was struggling with at the time, was little changes that could have been made, but the systems I worked in, it was just really like awkward. So you have to keep telling your story to those people, and you keep telling the story to the doctors who you want to get your knee x-rayed because it's, twice the size of what it was the week before, and you've got aches and pains, or you've got numbness in any part of your body, and they want the story all the time. And one of the things that I learned when I was working in children's services, the idea is that we weren't meant to keep asking the person, the parent, the child, for their story all the time. So even if it's not triggering and it's not re-traumatizing you, which traumatic experiences can do that, you find that sometimes, because you've got to deal with the system, you've got to keep repeating it. They're not satisfied. You can't record it and just send it to them. They want to keep asking you questions. And so that whole process around that accident took like 3 years, really, for the big stuff. Meanwhile, trying to get on with your life and heal, and that taking time and not having access to the things that would have helped or made it better. Anyway, I knew enough about the system to know that the first set of therapy that I had wasn't really helping. So I found someone else who was able to run hypnosis and NLP processes. And I'm not saying they're the be all and end all, but it worked for me. It took out, stopped having the really terrible dreams. I started settling a bit more, but I was still anxious and I still wasn't driving. I didn't drive for 7 months afterwards. Couldn't drive a car, couldn't get in, terrified in vehicles. And that's just the way your brain works. Your brain is now in a constant state of trauma and stress. So the story stayed with me for quite a while. And I didn't really talk to many people about it because, of course, you've got legal sides of things to clean up as well around that. But there have been other times in my life where things have been going on and you chat to your friends and you're sharing your story and your perspective. But there does come a time, and I've seen this with clients as well, where they'll say, I'm sick of keep going over this stuff. And sometimes that's the sign that you're ready for a shift and a breakthrough. And because you don't want to keep, it feels like you keep complaining, nothing's changing, what's happening. And so then you're looking for, what is the thing that I can do that will make the shift? What will stop me reacting this way or getting triggered or keep going around these patterns or these cycles? And so lots of the clients I work with, that I come into contact with, is bringing those patterns into awareness, bringing that story into awareness and seeing where they're sick of things, because it's getting sick of something and frustrated with something that actually can be the energy, the driving force to make a breakthrough, to move forward. And whether that's a huge breakthrough where you wake up and you've got an epiphany, or it's small incremental breakthroughs, it's breakthrough nonetheless. So you're invited to release these old stories that have weighed you down. So again, like the previous videos, I'd invite you to just spend time reflecting on what this means to you, what I'm talking about. And when you're ready, choose a story or a narrative, because we've got lots of stories and some people are great storytellers and we need some stories. But imagine placing the stories that you don't want to keep hold of anymore and putting them on a boat and pushing them out to sea. And if it's hard to do that, sometimes our identity is wrapped up in it. For many women who change their names when they get married, their identity is wrapped up in the marriage, the married name. That becomes your identity. So when you split up from a partner and you haven't got that name anymore, or you decide not to have the name, part of the grief is the grief of that identity that you had while you was in relationship with that person. And so we go through these processes way more than we realize, really. And sometimes we go through them too quick. And other stories, like I said, with my car accident, lingered for a long time because pain is a constant reminder. And I was in a lot of physical pain. And when the pain started to reduce and I started to feel like I was heading forward, because I could get so far and then overdo it, go for a walk, do things that would reactivate the pain. So, you're constantly in a state of reviewing what's going on for you. So the tip on this mental health tip, it's deep. This is deep, but this is about honoring your journey, honoring your wisdom, your experiences. You can write a release letter, write a letter to the old version of yourself or an outdated belief, thanking it for its lessons and lovingly letting it go. I have to admit, I struggled to lovingly let go of the story around my car accident, because there's still some things that perplex me about that. And but most of it has been released as I've practiced yoga, somatic work, meditation, mindfulness, hypnotherapy, Reiki, quantum touch healing, and then more recently going back to swimming and getting back in the gym meant that I knew I was really getting back on track to the way things were, over 5-6 years ago. So that's great when you start to get those signs. When you've wrote your story, whatever you're comfortable doing, if you're into the new and full moon cycles, you can rip it up or even burn it at that full moon. And the full moon is about letting go of things that don't work for you anymore. And you take from it the memories, any good memories from that, because it's good to have those, but you let go of the pain. And you can even say things like, I release and let go of the pain and the past memories that no longer serve me. I'm looking forward to a life of vitality, joy, and happiness. And there's nothing that I'm sharing with anyone on here that I haven't tried myself. Okay. So the yoga move here is the child's pose. So you can look it up if you've not seen it before. It's one pose, and that's about letting go and releasing. And that's a good move in yoga. The book recommendation is Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender by David Hawkins. And the song is Shake It Out by Florence and the Machine. And in particular, if we've had a traumatic event, we know that shaking out that feeling afterwards is really good to release that. The journal prompts, as usual, I'll share the journal prompts. They're at the bottom of the video. Do like and subscribe and contact me if there's anything you want to ask. But I will leave it quiet afterwards so that you can stay within your own thought process. So have a nice pen, a nice journal, and give yourself a good 10 minutes, 30 minutes to connect with the questions and the prompts, okay? So the first one is, what old story or belief am I ready to release today? How has this story held me back from my true potential? What new story would I love to create for myself?